We are so grateful to have with us tonight just a great man of valor, he's a CIA officer, Robert Tosh Plumlee. Mr. Plumlee has made headlines. Glad you're joining us tonight, Mr. Plumlee.
Well, glad to be with you.
The last time you were on our show, in fact, you were on with our intelligence asset insider W. You guys were talking about all sorts of things. You were talking about Benghazi. What's happened since the last time you were on?
And in my opinion, with my background and what I know, I conclude that it's covering up an international gun running operation that's been going on for over 40-something years, and the guns are pilfered, sent overseas, out of our direct commercial sales, monitored by the Blue Lantern, which, by the way, is supposed to be handled by the U.S. State Department. I try not to make allegations. I'm dumbfounded because they won't acknowledge these questions or answer. We are short over 16 billion U.S.-made weapons. Where are they? Where did the money go? So my contention is simply that we've been involved in an international gun-running operation all the way back to Cuba in the 50s, especially in the Iran-Contra era, and other brush wars in Angola that end up with U.S.-made American weapons in radical hands. So the only thing that I can conclude is that we start a conflict, we escalate the conflict, and we furnish money to both sides of the conflict, or we furnish guns to both sides of the conflict, and then we assimilate that money through cut-out companies and private contractors back to campaign contributions, and that is the reason, in my opinion, that they refuse to answer those questions. Answering those questions can open the door to an international gun-running operation that has been on the books, black book, for a number of years.
You've got experience going back into the early 60s with the CIA and operations such as this. What can you tell us?
I'll sum it up like this. When I was 20 years old, I was flying co-pilot for Regina Airlines out of Miami, Florida, and Riddle Airlines out of Miami, Florida. Riddle was at that time a startup cargo company. Regina was a Cuban air cargo carrier. We would take guns that were pilfered and stolen from National Guard armories, and we were taking those at El Castro. At the same time, because of the OAS treaty, we were also supplying tanks, planes, and armament and ammunition and guns to Batista. So we had guns going to Batista, and under the table in black operations, CIA-sponsored, through the White House, through the Pentagon, we were sending guns to this rebel, Fidel Castro. At that time, people only pronounced his name as Castro. In fact, Raul Castro, his brother, gave me one of the fatigue hats when we were in there at one time. Now, that was the 50s. Bring it on up, fast forward through a lot of things. We had Angola. U.S.-made weapons showed up in Angola. We've had other brush wars. We come up into the Iran-Contra, one of the biggest arms smuggling operations that's ever been known in the United States. The documents are now creeping forward. It substantiates that the CIA was not running guns, the White House was running guns, and the Pentagon, knowledge, was running guns to weapons, high-impact weapons, to foreign agents. And that's about all that I can say. I mean, it was just an internet. What the cover-up is in Benghazi, what the cover-up was in Iran-Contra, what the cover-up was in the Batista days, and also Haiti and Angola, was international gun running that comes from the United States arsenal. Now, in order to prove what I say, I'm just simply asking this. Why doesn't the Senate and the Congress investigate, inventory through the GAO, where our weapons are, and announce to the American people how much money we're short on those weapons? Again, go back and follow the money. Now, that's going to be very hard to do because a series of cutout companies are always used to distribute that money, and the same thing is used to assimilate those weapons in foreign countries. In the Benghazi case, before the ambassador, weapons on C-130s were coming from the United States, even with air-to-air refueling, and going in to foreign countries. And later it was exposed, but nothing was done in the press about it. A little back coverage, and that was about it, and then that went off the wires. Jordan, Turkey, Qatar, and Pakistan, safe houses run by cutout contractors affiliated with the CIA, control those weapons. Those weapons were taken by U.S. Navy Marines around SEALs, as a matter of fact, escorted those weapons around the Horn, some of them into the annex near Benghazi. The question being, what happened to those weapons when they went to the annex? When the riot started, what happened to those weapons at the annex? Those weapons were removed at the same time that the riot was starting. It was a diversion so that the annex and other areas where these U.S.-made weapons were stored could be pilfered and sent off to other operations. Basically, the reason that we were shipping these weapons to these that particular foreign country is that we were setting up a secret army. This was before the Syrian rebels were formed. Sometime after that, about a year after we had those weapons that we were shipping pilfered and stole them, we went into a systematic thing of trying to cover it up. Why do we want to cover it up? I mean, so we're setting up a secret army. So then when it started coming out about the weapons being stored in Jordan, suddenly the president of the United States made an announcement that we're going to help the rebels. We're going to set up the rebels. We'd already been funneling arms to the rebels for over 2 years. Now, all I'm asking, where is the investigative body in the Senate and the Congress that should be investigating what I say? They should be investigating, trying to defuse me. Answer the question and investigate what I say. That's all. Follow the money. They can't follow the money because it would expose the very people in high office that is receiving the money going into campaign contributions. If you notice, we have a tremendous election coming up here, which is going to be very questionable about the legitimacy of it and all that kind of stuff. I don't get involved in politics. Do not want to get trapped and pushed into politics. I don't care what the Secretary of State, whether she runs or doesn't run, or whatever she does. And I don't call names. I don't cuss people out. I don't say things like that. The point is, what needs to be investigated is where in the hell those guns go and where the hell the money go. Why is our Treasury short? Why isn't the GAO doing their job? We had the same thing happen in Iran-Contra. We took weapons off the books when our 82nd and 101st went down to hold maneuvers in Honduras. I'm one of the pilots that flew the weapons back to El Toro Marine Naval Air Station, China Lakes, to be retrofitted and then taken back down and given to radical groups and rebel groups in Central America and all the way down into Argentina. So there's an international weapons smuggling operation going on, run right out of the White House, the CIA logistical support, and the Pentagon knows all about it. I can't say it any plainer than that, can I?
No, and that's mighty plain. I'll tell you that.
Did the ambassador find out what was going on? Oh, wait a minute. The ambassador already knew what was going on because what he was concerned about was not the weapons shipment. He was concerned about why these radical groups were getting Stinger missiles. So he wasn't complaining about the weapons. He wasn't complaining about people making movies. He was complaining about how are these radicals getting Stinger missiles. He already knew about the gun running operation. That was part of his cover, and that was why he was sent over there to monitor and run that operation. Now, Stevens was a CIA. Stevens was monitoring operations for the CIA under the disguise of an ambassador. In other words, he's an intelligence officer. You understand what I just said? Now, he already knew about the gun running. He already knew about the safe houses in Jordan, Qatar, and Pakistan and Turkey. He knew about all that. In other words, because we were building a secret army, covert, to go in and destabilize or form our own army for whatever reason, sell them the guns, let the guns get out of stock into rebels' hands, and then also be stolen from those rebels, and then shoot down our helicopters with U.S. Navy SEALs on board. Now, to me, that's an atrocity that I will not let go uninvestigated. If they want to put me in jail for what I just said, then bring me in front of a federal judge, because I'll tell it to the federal judge. This thing needs to be investigated. It stinks to high heaven. And I said I wasn't going to get upset about this. I'm not upset. I just cannot understand the corruption that we're going through in this country. One matter after another, over and over and over. I have never seen in all my 76 years the incompetence that's running wild in Washington, D.C. It's unreal. In other words, in fact, it's so unreal that the American people have been sanitized into the state of apathy and laziness that they don't want to hear what I'm talking about. That's right. They're not going to do anything about it. I'm trying to state a fact. My information came from very reliable sources out of Homeland Security, the Pentagon, and also people that's in an elected position. So that's three separate sources. I have a thing. Twoism is a truism. When you get the same information from two separate sources, you better investigate that information, because there's smoke there someplace. And where there's smoke, there's damn fire. And the weapons deal, there's smoke out there. You better start finding out where these weapons are going. Why the media, mainstream media, okay, let me do a parallel here if I can. 60,000 Mexican citizens were killed in 3 years, tells, with U.S.-made weapons. How come the American people don't know that? But yet they can tell you when 5 people were killed in Turkey with a roadside bombing. They can tell you when 10 people were killed in Somalia. And they can tell you about the warlords that are running around all in that country and how come they need help. We know about all those things, but our next-door neighbor, who has been fighting a drug war in and out for a number of years, we don't know a damn thing about what's going on down there. Check it out. Don't believe Tosh Plumlee. Check it out. How many Mexicans have been killed in the cartel drug wars in the plazas in Juarez? In Juarez alone, in 1 year, there were 6,000 people killed right across our border from Fort Bliss. We even sent troops in to Mexico to train the Navy Marinos to go in and weed out the corruption in the Mexican Army. They took the guns that we give them through legal channels of the direct commercial sales program, the guns that we shipped to the Mexican Army through treaties and agreements that we had. And then the Mexican Army deserts, takes half those guns with them to the cartel and set up the Sinaloa, or the Zeta, not the Sinaloa, that was another cartel. And the Zeta and the Sinaloa start fighting. They control plazas in there where they kill. I posted on my Facebook page a shootout right in front of them. With American weapons. Brian Terry was killed with a U.S.-made weapon, and it didn't come from a small mom-and-pop shop. Anybody can go on Google and order and just Google anti-aircraft weapons Mexico Juarez. How do you get an anti-aircraft weapon to Mexico in the back of a pickup truck? How do you buy an anti-aircraft weapon from a mom-and-pop shop? How does a straw person pick up a weapon of that caliber, including 50 caliber sniper rifles and American-made goggles, night vision goggles? How do they get them across the border? So there's 1,000 questions that our elected officials should be asking about Mexico. You don't realize that Mexico almost cut diplomatic relations with us over this issue.
Well, what was Fast and Furious? I mean, what do you know about that, and what was that about?
What I'm telling you comes from what I know. I lived it. I worked it. I was employed by it. I flew it. I was on my hands-on practical experience, and I don't work off theories. So Fast and Furious, ATF set up an operation. They thought they could go find out where all this stuff was coming from, and they could track these things. I'll tell you experience. Bill Conroy, Narco News. Check him out. Check Plumlee. Put Narco News, Plumlee, Mexico, on Narco News. Find out when the boots on the ground went into Mexico. Find out what we found when we had raided stash houses in there and took pictures. American weapons stored in places. 1/4 mile across the border fence, a new million-a-mile border fence. Escondido is the name of the ranch. Border Patrol. I took the pictures of the Border Patrol shaking hands with the Mexican Marinos after they raided the ranch. Salem News and Narco News published it. I get $1 a year to work for Salem News as a photojournalist and an investigative reporter. The reason that I'm even doing this is onefold, is to protect myself. Sunshine is the only thing that will keep me alive at this point. Hopefully, that might even not work. I don't. That's not the issue. Now, we're talking about Mexico. The question was, how come we don't know about what I'm just telling you? How come good investigative reporters have laid their life on the line inside Mexico, bringing this stuff to the American people and to our elected officials, only to have it shoved up their butts and also lose their jobs, and in some cases, commit suicide? When and where is this stuff I'm talking about going to be investigated? The team that I work with, Task Force 7, inside Mexico, training up calling in the Marinos from Mexico City to train them in intelligence gathering techniques and also how to fly drones. So they went to drone school up in Nevada and went in there to do what? To gather the intelligence and find out what was going on as far as the drug lords. Now, since we're talking about Mexico, and I know in essence of time I'm trying to speed out here. But Carl Quintero was sentenced to 50 years, and he did 28. He got out, and he got serious. Do you want to know how he got out?
Please, yes.
He made a deal after a while when the new president was coming into Mexico that he would spill the beans on the $21,000 a month that he was receiving from the CIA so that aircraft from the United States could land and be refueled on their way to Santa Elena, Costa Rica, for the secret airbase known as Point West in Oliver North's notebooks. Also, Chapo Guzman finally got captured. We haven't heard another word, and we have supposed to have extradition request to Mexico to bring those two to the United States to try them. Prior to their capture, they had $5 million rewards on there. And one of them gets out of jail because he says, I'm getting ready to talk. He couldn't talk when he was in the party because he was responsible for killing a DEA agent or knew about it, and the CIA was present when that DEA agent was tortured to death. His name was Kiki Camarena. DEA knows this. The DEA can't get past their gatekeeper to investigate that. And my God, it's been so long ago. What difference does it make?
Yeah,
what difference
Hillary.
does it make that Kiki Camarena was tortured to death when a CIA op man was standing there watching it? I used to say that the CIA op man couldn't do a damn thing because they'd have killed him too. They have a way of cutting your face off and putting it on a basketball. You know what I'm talking about? That's
pretty harsh reality.
It's reality. In other words, to be dismembered piece by piece while you're still alive is a pretty horrible way to go, isn't it? How come we don't know those things in the United States? But yet we know everything about roadside violence. We know everything about what they're supposed to be over there because we're escalating a conflict in a foreign country and we're supplying the weapons to those conflicts on both sides for money, for profit. Talk about the ugly American. That's about as ugly as we can get. And that's why I want my country back. I am an American citizen, and I'm appalled at what the hell we've been doing. And I've had over damn near 50 years in one form or another, in and out, on the farm, only to be called when I needed money and when they needed me. And my CIA friends that are listening to this know exactly what the hell I'm talking about when I say the farm. You understand what I just did? I sent a message to Langley.
Yeah.
I know they're listening. I know what they're doing. I know what
they're listening.
So bring me in front of a federal judge, a couple of them, because here's what's going to happen. I'm one guy right now that was involved in that. I run cocaine in this country, and it was written about in 1990, April. I'm a guy that admitted I run 40 tons of cocaine into this country on C-130s. I took loads and loads of weapons out here as far south as Argentina, and all the way into Nicaragua, and all the way into Costa Rica, and all the way into John Hall's Ranch, and all the way into Port Escondido, and all the way into Oaxaca, and all the way into Point West, Santa Elena, Costa Rica. How come American people don't know that those guns were, and weapons and cocaine was going back and forth? A Marine colonel by the name, and write this down, and have our friends look it up. Don't believe what Tosh Plumlee says. Go check it out. Log in the name, Colonel James Sabot, U.S. Marine, Colonel James Sabot, committed suicide with a shotgun stuck up his mouth when his wife went to church. And what had happened later on the investigation, he was done with suicide. Shortly after that, Gary Webb shot himself twice in the head, suicide. What was those two men investigating? He was a wing commander at El Toro. He found out about the cocaine that I was bringing in on the C-130. It was supposed to be in an interdiction program that was being stored and under lock and key at El Toro, and the evidence bin was, quote, quote, being broke into, and that stuff was getting on the streets of L.A., and Gary Webb started investigating, and he and Colonel Sabot started talking about it, and within 2-3 years, both of them are dead by suicide. I'll tell you another one that just died recently here was Rupert, even though he wasn't completely what he said that he was, but yet he was investigating exactly what I was talking about. I'm talking about now. And he just committed suicide. So I just want to let everybody know out there, Tosh Plumlee just opened his mouth pretty strong. I have absolutely no intention of committing suicide. I have absolutely no intention of killing myself. I don't think I'm going to have a heart attack, but the hell, you never know. I'm 76 years old, and I'm tired of what I've seen for 50 years going on with our elected officials. This has to be investigated. Now, if they want to bring me to jail because I'm talking out of school, I am not a government employee. I have been gagged before. My testimony is classified top secret, committee sensitive, through John Kerry back in the 90s, in the 80s rather. And why is my testimony back then top secret? Because it talks about Praetorian Guards, talks about special operations set up to protect certain programs of the presidency. That's what a Praetorian Guard is. John Stockwell was case officer in Angola. He coined the phrase Praetorian Guard. He had a book called Praetorian Guard. He got in a lot of trouble because at the time he wrote it, he still was under the secrecy clause. At the time I started talking, I was under the secrecy clause. They told me I was going to jail if I divulged this information. I said, bring it on. Let's go talk to a judge. Never heard another word except my house got burned down in Grant, Colorado. Now, okay, that was an accident, right? No, it was firebomb. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation has a complete report on that. Let the researchers go check it out. That was
What
1980,
year?
August 2nd, 1980. Grant, Colorado. Fire. Firebomb. Now, let me tell you something about that little fire. At that time, I was going to write a book. I won't go into town because I don't promote books. I don't get any money. Everything I do is on my own. There was documents later that was reported that came out of that fire and was received by Freedom of Information, and they had burnt stuff around the edges, and there were congressional documents from the Congressional Committee. And my question is, how did those FOIA burned documents be released through the Freedom of Information Act some years later, 2003, that showed burn marks when a house was burned down in 1980? What was in those documents? One of them with burn edges around. They're talking about a counterfeiting operation going on in Cuba, run by the United States to destabilize the country. Wow. What does that mean? This has been an ongoing thing, and I feel I should wrap it up, not the program, but wrap it up about what my career has been and why I'm talking the way I'm talking. If I do not talk, I'm dead. If I do talk, I might be dead. But I got a better chance staying alive at talking. I'm not ratting anybody out. I'm not talking about anybody. I'm saying everything that I just told there, our people, the American citizens, don't believe me, go check it out. That's the reason I opened up the Facebook account, so that I could take all this disjointed information in links, pull it all together, and put it out there. I never thought that I would get this kind of support that I've got. I am totally, totally overwhelmed. Over 125,000 people are now talking about that Facebook page. Why? American people are looking for leadership. And boy, they really went to the bottom of the barrel if they're coming more. That shows how far, how bad.
Well, here's a guy that lost his house to an intentional firebombing in 1980. Tosh, let me ask you something. When you were flying cocaine back into the United States, you said 40 tons. Did you believed, or did you believe that you were doing this to get it off the streets?
I tell you what, all of us pilots in those days, the first days, before Santa Elena was formed, the southern front of the island, before the southern front of the Iran country through the Reagan administration, before that was done, we felt, there were 16 of us. By the way, 9 of them went to jail and 4 of them are dead. We honestly thought that we were involved with a DEA interdiction program. We thought by tracing out Carl Quintero's ranch, and when the magazine from the San Diego Reader on April 2nd, 1990, by Neil Matthews, I released all the battle maps to him. He did a tremendous article on I Run Drugs for Uncle Sam by Neil Matthews, San Diego Reader, April 2nd, 1990. It's been posted on the Internet. But in that article, forget about the article and what all it said, but in that article is a detailed map with all the flyways, the aircraft ID numbers, the names of the pilots, including the ones that went to jail, including the ones that are now dead, was all laid out on that map. That same map was taken to Senator Gary Hart through his security advisor, Bill Holden, and Senator Hart wrote a letter to the Senate Armed Service Committee, to the Senate Intelligence Committee, not complaining, but stating alleged, all this information about the 40 tons of cocaine coming in this country and about the weapons going out. That was turned over to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, the Senate Intelligence Committee, and according to his letter, which is also posted on the internet, Gary Hart letter, Senator Gary Hart letter, 1991, a few months after Colonel Sabot was murdered, posted, and they refused to investigate. Later, we found out the reason that they refused to investigate because it would, again, like Benghazi, it would expose the international gun running operation that was being conducted out of the White House. And at that time, it was the Reagan era. Later, it was the Bush era. Later, it was the Clinton era. We know about MENA. We know about all these places from actual testimony that was covered up and absolutely went no place. The only people that went to jail was third-tier, fourth-tier players, the pilots, the loaders, and after their character assassinated, thrown to the wolves, charges were filed on them. The ones that didn't play ball were murdered, like Colonel Sabot. I don't know if I'm following a timeline here. All right, again, let these people go out and investigate exactly what I've said. Go back to Cuba. Look, okay, Grenada was a little brush war. Panama, Noriega, hey, man, was he on CIA payroll? Where did the weapons go from Iran-Contra? They were stored over in Panama. When Noriega turned against, he had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of U.S.-made weapons. And I was one of the guys that started flying them back before the war, 89, 90, 91. Go into that time period and take a look and see how many American citizens were murdered, committed suicide, U.S. Marines killed, slaughtered. Nobody wants to cover that. Mainstream media won't touch it. The gatekeepers have been put in place to make damn sure that this story does not see the light of day. Now, Plumlee did a bad thing, but by me releasing systematically all these years, or not all these years, but every time something pops to the surface, in other words, I'm going to talk about it to protect my life. This is before the fact information. If anybody will check the timeline for when the information first became available, and when it all actually became investigated, we have a lead time of almost 2.5 years. Why? How many weapons were moved in 2.5 years before they finally investigated and made it public? When did operatives start talking? Operatives started talking when the administration, special interest, and the lobbyists started complaining that they were afraid they were going to talk. They were going to kill the cash cow. So those guys had to be first character assassinated, and if that didn't work, they had to have an accident, or they had to blow themselves away with a shotgun in their mouth, or they had to shoot themselves twice in the head. Now, this is an ongoing operation. What we do in ops, we have a successful operation, we run that operation, then we put it on the shelf, and then a later date, maybe a few years later, that was a successful operation, and no one investigated it, and no one found out, and the trail has been covered in cold. We'll take that operation off, we'll dust it off a little bit, and then we'll put it in another part of the country, let's say around the Horn of Africa. We'll just put it out there for a little bit. Well, wait a minute, here we go. There goes the weapons. Well, we put it out, we dust it off, shake it off, tweak it a little bit, and put it back out in modern day, flown by modern aircraft with modern pilots. Now, some of the guys that are flying these ops today are the grandchildren of the pilots I flew with. Doesn't that sound strange?
Mr. Plumlee, one of the questions I have, if I may, the Clintons, Arkansas, the savings and loan down in Arkansas, the bank down in Arkansas, the federal bank.
Okay, the Keating guys and the robbing of the savings and loans. I can't remember the name of the bank that you're talking about. It's a savings loan, But people don't know that. In other words, this generation does not know that the savings and loans were looted. And,
right.
I won't use the name. I'll let you use that name. Was Keating involved in that?
At the periphery, Keating. Well,
does Vince Foster know about that? That's another guy. I mean, how far do we really want to go into this can of worms?
well, it's funny you should bring up the strange death of Vince Foster, which his death.
Has anybody ever read the Rudy report? How many times that body was moved before it was classified as a suicide? I mean, I'm just throwing out stuff here. I mean, since you brought it up.
Well, you wouldn't happen to know anything about Mr. Foster, would you? Would you there, Tosh?
No, I don't know nothing about that. I mean, I just know it was another strange death. I just know that it was a warning sent out to people like me, pilots and other people that carried out cargo kickers and refuelers, anybody that could point the way to where these aircraft were going in and out. I can talk a little bit about MENA. I've had a lot of reports that are not true. I know all about the kids on the railroad track. I know about the Jeremiah film station. I was interviewed for that. I know where it went, and I know what people wanted me to say during an election year, and I would not say it. So, yeah, I'm asked a lot. Barry Seal was a good friend of mine, as a matter of fact. In fact, I even went to one of his children's birthday parties before Double Cross, the movie Double Cross about Barry Seal's activity was even made, DEA. So, yeah, I've got a long lineage of knowing some of these things, you know. Look at Ben Foster's death. Get the Rudy Report. There was a saying going around politics at that particular time. Is I don't know. I can't go there. That would point out. That would point out somebody. Okay. One of the sayings similar to this: "Don't mess with the Clinton clan." That was a message sent to us pilots. Why was that message sent to us pilots? Why was that message sent to Barry Seal? Barry Seal's murder, he was put up in a safe house by a federal judge, and the cartel was notified where he was going to be. The CIA, in my opinion, was ordered by the White House to go in and get those assassins of Colombia safely into this country so they could gun him down sitting in this Cadillac when he was in front of a safe house that the judge had put him in. So they fingered Seal by putting him in, had to report to a safe house every day at a certain time, spend the night there, because that was part of his federal sentence for his quote drug running. He was also logging interdiction routes like other pilots, myself included. So the message come out: you don't mess with the Clinton clan. Now the only time that I've been accused of flying all kinds of drugs into Mena, Arkansas, or knowing what all went on there. My only trip into Mena, or three trips actually, but was number one, to have a cargo seal door fixed by Richmond Aviation, I believe it was. There was a CBS report of a C-130 taxiing into Richmond in Mena, Arkansas, flying a pirate's flag out the left window. I'm the guy holding that flag. So CBS photographed that C-130 taxiing in. CBS said it was loaded with drugs. It was not. It was going over there to have a door seal fixed because we couldn't hold pressurization. Now, that's from the pilot. Years later, I heard Plumlee flew into Mena, Arkansas with a C-130 load of guns, and 2 kids were killed on the railroad tracks because they watched the plane land. Now, that's mainstream media report. Do you see why I get a little upset?
I can see why you'd get a lot upset.
Whatever happened to Neil Bush? How come we don't hear anything about Neil Bush? How come this generation today does not hear anything about the rip-off of the savings and loans? How come they do hear about the rip-off of the banks recently in 2008? Yeah. They hear about that because it's their generation. How come they don't know history about the savings and loans? We know about every other scandal. We know about IRS. We know about what someone does with their PP every time they turn around. It's thrown in our face for months by mainstream media, but we don't know what happened around the 80s when billions of dollars suddenly disappeared from savings and loans. And I think it was a guy by the name of Keating, some guy named Bush, or Neil. Was it Neil? Or was it Jeb? Or was it all of them? I don't really know, but I just attacked them just then. So Tosh Plumlee sure as hell not going to defend himself.
and you know, Tosh, I don't see a lot of the Bush clan or the people in government coming to your defense at all in anything. And isn't that sad?
Just now, let them stand up to it. I just repeated history. This is not theory. You know that. It's history. What happened to the savings and loans? Where did the money go? Also, check the commercial sales program, direct commercial sales program during that time span, and ask yourself, where did all those weapons go? Where did all that money go? What I just said, let the people check it. It's factual. Let's say one other thing real fast. I'm a little pissed off about something that went on there in the halls of D.C. I won't mention names, but I do not appreciate a sitting senator calling me a domestic terrorist because I post on Facebook. Why is my Facebook account being hacked so many times? What's going on out there? What's behind the scenes we don't know about that's being played upon American citizens? There's an undercurrent out there that you don't know that this is happening. But now we do because of the work that Snowden did and also Manley. Some of their, but look what's happened to them. I'll tell you one other thing real fast, but have your people go look up U.S. Army Private Eugene B. Dinkin, Dinkin, not Dinkins, but Dinkin. I'm not going to say any more about it. Go look it up, pull the documents. You can get some of them off the Mary Farrell site. Read what that man went through and read what they did to him. And then compare that. Every whistleblower all the way up to Manning and Snowden, it's the same MO, same operation, a form of character assassination. And they started doing it, but people are crazy. Or they put them in a psycho ward. Or they malign them by saying, oh, yeah, we know all about him. He's not, oh, yeah, he's a hot check writer. And they cherry-pick documents they can find. You know what I mean? They
sure.
Take the documents, cherry-pick documents, and then use that as a confirmation. And here's another thing about our media. Somebody can go out here and make an allegation. He gets a publisher. They publish it in a book. Researchers 10 years later come by and say, oh, wow, look what happened back then. And the whole damn thing was based on a lie. So therefore it becomes fact because it was in a book. Does that make sense to you? I'm just trying to essence of time here, because I know you're on short leash here.
Well, go ahead.
But let me tell you a real
Tosh.
fast story, and I don't normally tell this story, but back in the 60s, I was accused of writing hot checks all over the country. FBI 105 files, they're all over the internet. I don't have anything to hide. And they said I wrote checks here, I wrote checks there, I wrote checks over here, I wrote checks at Morehouse Fashion. I was arrested for breaking into a National Guard army, blah, blah, blah. I was arrested with a plane load of guns bound for Cuba, but yet I wrote a check to Morehouse Fashion. So then all those documents are used to character assassinate me in those years. Well, in those years, if you drop the flag on the floor, somebody's going to kick your ass. If you said anything about the president, you're going to get it kicked again. Well, that's not the way it is now. But in those particular days, when they even released a document that said I bought a weapon and was considered to be armed and dangerous, and then turned me over to a police officer who asked for my driver's license. And when I reached, because he had run a scan on me and an FBI document come up and said I'd bought a weapon, which I hadn't, and then he almost shot me. Now, that was to take me out, but it didn't happen that way. But okay, let me go one step further. Every one of those checks that have been posted up in the internet page now with 105 files and all that, then they say, wow, man, you can't believe a damn thing Plumlee says because he wrote checks all over the country. But the document, after they threw cherry picking, they did not pick the document that said all the checks that was alleged written by Mr. Plumlee. It was turned over to the FBI crime laboratory, and there was no handwriting similarities. So what does that mean? There was no checks. None. Another document says when Mr. Plumlee was arrested in the aircraft, he was arrested for shipping or flying guns to Cuba. That's the document. The Border Patrol, the custom document says this. When Mr. Plumlee was arrested in Columbus, Ohio, he was attempting to ship guns to Florida. It also said when Mr. Plumlee was arrested in Columbus, Ohio, he was attempting to write a check at Morehouse Fashion. Now, what does that mean? And then here's the thing. Mr. Plumlee was interviewed in jail at Columbus, Ohio. If anybody wants to check the record, there is no arrest record or no jail time served in Columbus, Ohio. Then I'm down in Florida flying guns. I get arrested for a $50, quote, quote, insufficient fund check for King Soopers in Denver, Colorado. I spent 6 months in county jail waiting for a trial, all through the Warren Commission report. I went and stood in front of a judge by the name of Judge Finesilver, and he sentenced me to the Colorado State Reformatory for an indefinite term. Now, I'm just saying something out there. You got a lot of listeners. Go check it out. Indefinite term on a no-account check with no signature that could be matched up as being mine. What was the reason for that? I was released after 9 months and spending 7 months waiting to get in front of Judge Finesilver. And then I spent 9 months in the Colorado State Reformatory on that check charge. And I was released 2 weeks after the Warren Commission completed their hearings. What does that mean? And then I had to carry that shadow with me for a number of years, rebuild my credit rating, could not get a flying job, and was forced to go back into ops.
Black ops, right?
Yeah,
Is what
that's what happened. So every time I had a thriving business in Colorado, IRS come in and shut me down. I spent 10 years fighting the IRS. You know what they did? They said I hadn't filed returns. They said that they had found money that I didn't declare. I worked under 21 different names for CIA. I don't know why.
That's incredible.
But what I'm trying to point out is that when you do the kind of work that I do, they can force you back in and also force you to keep your mouth shut. Now, I know the CIA is listening to this, and they know I've just did methods and procedures. So, come on at me. I'm ready. They might kill me, but they sure as hell can't eat me. If they did eat me, they're going to get damn sick. So,
well, one thing I wanted to ask you about, and we kind of glanced over when we were talking about Danny Casolaro, who was investigating links between BCCI, Iran-Contra, and INSLAW. He called the covert operation in which he believed the CIA was involved the octopus, actually. We know that Danny Casolaro, as he continued his investigation, he received death threats, and he said that he told his brother one time that he said if there was an accident and he died, not to believe it. And then August of 1991, he was found dead in his bathtub of a hotel, or in the bathtub of a hotel room in Virginia, where he had a meeting with the U.S. Army Special Forces covert intelligence officer. Did you know Danny?
I think he was a little older than I was at that time, but I'm not sure.
I mean, the reason I brought that up is because we're looking at INSLAW, then Webster Hubbell as Attorney General, and then, of course, you had mentioned Deputy White House Counsel Vince Foster, who was linked to both Iran-Contra and INSLAW through Arkansas companies Parkometer and Systematics. Vince Foster was found dead in Fort Marcy Park on July 20th of 1993, and then 3 days later, Attorney Paul Wiltshire, allegedly investigating the octopus, was found dead.
Well, in that time, now look at this. We talked Colonel Sabot, 1990. We talked about Gary Webb. Later, we talked about the Vincent Foster around that. Well, and then you just brought up a few more, and there's others out there that we know about, but mainstream, our society today doesn't know about it. So the point being, what you just brought out, you're talking about a systematic MO. Who was that systematic MO? I mean, why are all these people dead? They're all going to commit suicide at once. I mean, what are we going to do? Go to a ball stadium and say, okay, give me a gun. Let's do this in front of the people, Why are we feared that these people have so much power? I mean, I'm talking about dark power. You know what I'm saying when I say dark power? Well, this is political. I know a guy, very good guy, a little flaky lot, and he knows I'll say that. I ain't going to mention his name. But we know what went on with Shackley, Ted Shackley, J.M. Wade headquarters in Miami, Carl Gables, Miami Station. We know what went on. We know there's been assassin teams out there for years. In fact, there was just a document released just a few weeks ago about assassin teams that have been employed by the political interests to go out. Now, how come special lobbyists and political interests have access to military attack teams? We call them the dogs of war. The deaths that you just reported were done by the dogs of war, the Praetorian Guards. Their only mission is to protect what we're talking about. It doesn't go public. They're special attack teams. We got drones out here. It won't be long until we be zeroing in on people like me and accidentally take them out from an object that you can't even see, whether it be by laser beam scope, or whether it be about an outright 50 caliber bullet through the head, sniper rifle, fired from a drone. The old story, 1984, Big Brother is watching, is now a reality. That was a prophecy.
You had mentioned the deaths of two boys, Kevin Ives and Don Henry, were Bryant, Arkansas teenage boys whose bodies were found August 1987 lying side by side on railroad tracks near the Mena Airport. What was the real deal with that?
I can only give secondhand and peripheral information on that, but here's what I know about that. In some ways, that's what brought Mena to the surface. SEAL was training some pilots, not at Mena, but north of Mena, another base, not a base, but his place. And he had a fat lady, and that was a C-123, and a couple others, smaller aircraft, and aero commanders and stuff like that. He was doing some training there, low-flying aircraft, and also doing some what they call halo drops, high altitude, low opening. Purpose of that was to get combat troops into Nicaragua by dropping them over in the Costa Rica side at high altitude and let them drift over to low altitude opening in Nicaragua. And they were advisors. So SEAL was sort of doing some of those kind of things. These boys hanging around there started seeing all these aircraft north of Mina. And then they were, this is a story I heard, and they were walking down the railroad track, and they started talking to their family about what they were seeing. It was going on in Mina and north of Mina with all this activity, military activity. Reported that to the local police, which was tied in pretty heavy with the Clintons. They got back to Clinton, and then one day, what I heard, the boys disappeared. Their bodies were later found on the train tracks, and it was reported they were run over by the trains. Well, those boys had been playing on those tracks for years, and they knew their way around the territory there and so on like that. So that was a very suspicious death. The contention was, and speculation, conspiracy theories, began to use that the boys found out about the drug running going into Mina, and they reported it. Well, it wasn't quite like that, but investigation started. They found out about defense contracts going to the Mina, and all the aircraft, military aircraft, and private company aircraft going in for repairs and refueling and things like that. And so it was alleged that drugs were being sent into Mina, Arkansas. I'm not saying there wasn't drugs going in, but I'm saying that as far as I know, I didn't fly any direct into Mina except on 2 trips, and that was supposed to be going to evidence bins like it was in El Toro. So same MO, and didn't think too much of it about that time. But after the kids got killed, and after that was exposed, they sort of shut that down a little bit because it was coming up to Clinton's election times, first election. They shut it all up so that they could not be used. Basically, that was Clinton's Benghazi. Bill Clinton.
Exactly. And if I can say this, Tosh and ladies and gentlemen, the boys were killed on August 23rd, 1987. They were found lying side by side on railroad tracks. Okay, and here's the deal. Kevin Ives and Don Henry. Ives had a fractured skull, and the bottom parts of both legs were amputated. Both kids, actually. The Arkansas State Medical Examiner, Dr. Malik, now he was appointed by then Governor Bill Clinton, ruled the boys had, and I'm quoting this from a report now, fallen asleep on the railroad tracks where their bodies were found. Their arms were neatly folded by their sides. The medical examiner also stated, and I'm quoting from the report, apparently the boys didn't hear the train coming. They were stoned out of their minds on pot. Ives' mother, Linda Ives, won the legal right to have the bodies exhumed and re-autopsied by an independent medical examiner who found their cause of death was murder by beating and stabbing before their bodies were placed on the railroad tracks.
Okay. The boys had penetrated a very secret compound that SEAL was training troops out that was going into Nicaragua. A black crew. We got an open line here, by the way.
Yeah, I can tell.
The echo.
Oh, I got it.
And, those boys were pretty well beaten up. They wasn't going to escape. They didn't try to run. Scared to death, and knocked unconscious. And then at that point, their bodies were mutilated. And the reason they were mutilated and then carried to the railroad track so that the mutilation could be covered by a train run over them. A train did run over them, but they were already dead before the train ran over them because there was no blood, not as much blood at the crash site of the train that would indicate that the boys were asleep and alive. They were already dead. So that's what I know about that. And that came from a guy that was talking in a bar that got pretty drunk, and he claimed that he was an assassin for the CIA. And that was in Grant, Colorado, and that was just a few months. Well, actually, it was a few years after the house fire in Grant, Colorado. Come to find out, the guy that told that story while he was drinking at the Twin Spruce in Grant, Colorado. And some people out there are listening to this, and they know what I'm talking about, and they remember the day that it happened. He was sitting there, and he was a plant, and he was sent out there to pull me out. He later told me he couldn't do it because he was not paid enough money. And then he was talking about what I just told you. So I thanked that man. And he did.
Pull you out? What do you mean? What does that mean, Tosh? Take you out?
I was living, in those years I was living in Grant. I was hiding out. And I was trying to write a book called The Black Knights of Cuba. And I'd sent that book to an agent. And that agent was a New York agent. That agent was CIA. And that book went to CIA. And then 2 months later, this guy comes in on a helicopter in Grant, Colorado, comes up there to get a sandwich, order a sandwich from Dennis, and he wants to know where he can find his old helicopter buddy, Tosh Plumlee. So then later, when he got drunk, we all had a lot of fun up there and went out to Digger Junction to get some dancing, picked up some ladies, and raised a little hell. He really got drunk, and he told me the whole damn story. He said, I'm up here to pull you out. Well, pull you out is a phrase, and we'll take you out of operations. Then when Colonel Sabot come in the 90s, this man and Colonel Sabot got killed. Harry Webb gets killed. What's it in? Well, it takes back to the international gunfighting. So, yeah, I got a story. The point is, I can tie it all together in a time frame. If somebody thinks that I could fabricate this thing for 50 years, then I'm one hell of a genius. And let me clarify one thing. I was a CIA covert contract pilot, operative. What that means is that everything I just said was cut out. I'm a civilian working in military ops under CIA jurisdiction. So I'm a contractor. In other words, I was not employed as a case officer. So there's a big difference there. And the reason that people like me are contract employees is for the sake of plausible deniability. And then we are also assigned to aircraft companies that are front companies for the CIA. Evergreen Helicopters, Mountain States Aviation, Intermountain Aviation, L.B. Smith. I can name a host of them. Regina Airlines, Criddle Airlines, World, a lot of them in Southeast Asia, the old Air America, the old Air America. What you have basically an army that is set up by the White House and the Pentagon with CIA logistical support to go in and do various things. Now, sometimes those various things were very good because they would get information that assassin teams in Angola were getting ready to take out an ambassador, and they would fly in there and you wouldn't even know it, and they'd take them out in a heartbeat. But nowadays, those kind of missions go sour because of political influence. And also the teams that do these missions nowadays, sometimes they get killed on the spot. We had an accident with a C-130 and a helicopter back in long before Desert Storm. We also, there's been documents recently released where we were sending missiles, tow missiles, over to Iran. We were sending tow missiles to Iran on C-130s, left and right into the White House operation, and the documents I just posted recently on my Facebook page. Anybody wants to read them can read them. Don't believe me, read the damn documents. A friend of mine found them and sent them to me. He's a researcher. And he said, wow, Tosh, this confirms exactly what you've been saying. I said, well, yeah, I told you. I've been saying this for 20 years on that operation. The documents date back to 1986. The same time Vince Foster was killed and all these others, and this Clinton clan was gathering momentum to take a governor and run him for president. So, another puppy president. See what I'm getting at?
Tosh, it's something that the Clinton influence has never left Washington since the 1990s, late 80s, early 1990s.
Doug, there's another world out there that the 8 to 5 have no idea that has existed and still exists today. They're incapable of believing what this is doing. Now, let me clarify one thing. I have absolutely nothing against the Clinton clan. and or Hillary or Bill or whatever the hell you want to call these people. I know what's going on, and they know I know what's going on. There's a different game that people like me are supposed to play. I'm talking way out of school, and I'm pissing a lot of people off, but I'm telling the truth. And I'm hoping that by me coming out, I'll bring these other pilots and players out. Do you know what happened in the basement of the White House that really ticked Mexico off? The documents that would substantiate the gun running going through Carl Quintero's ranch were destroyed in the basement of the Pentagon. However, just recently, the Mexican government found copies, and they presented them to our State Department. And our State Department had no comment, and the ambassador in Mexico threatened to pull diplomatic relations from the United States. Back to why isn't Carl Quintero being extradited to the United States for the murder of Kiki Camarena, DEA agent? Why isn't Joaquin Guzman being extradited to the United States via Mexico? We have not, according to Mexico, as of today, we have not made the request. Carl Quintero, a few months ago, let me correct that, made the statement, they can't do nothing to me. I've got the goods on them. I'll tell them all about the CIA thing. Hector Bareilles is a decorated DEA agent, and he was in charge of the Kiki Camarena. And he told me he'd go on your program anytime to talk to you about that. Bill Jordan was a decorated DEA agent in charge of the El Paso intelligence unit and knows all about the over 6,000 murders in Juarez on gun running. I went in and photographed U.S. American-made weapons in a warehouse in Juarez, and Bill Conroy wrote about it, and I was with the task force that was training out the Mexican Morenos out of Mexico City to hunt down the renegades within the ranks of the Mexican Army. Now, that's all documented before the fact. The ambassadors down there complain. Also, Salem News copied that, too, Salem-news.com, because I give the story to them and the pictures and the ID numbers of the weapons. And that was before Fast and Furious broke. They used Fast and Furious to cover up that operation. So there's your diversion. The straw people are responsible for the guns getting in, or U.S. guns getting into Mexico. But I go back to my earlier statement, how do you get an anti-aircraft weapon to Mexico in the back of a pickup truck that you got from a mom-and-pop gun show? American people need to know that. Why doesn't our elected officials investigate that? If they investigated that, it would lead into the campaign contributions, and they can't afford that to happen because they'd all be impeached or put in jail. Now, I don't know if I can say it any clearer than that. So I've made some strong allegations here, and I know they're listening. I know what's going on, and I know I'm going to get my ass winged. This is something that the American people need to know. That's my opinion from what I know from 50 years doing black ops. I'm not looking for publicity. I'm just looking for truth. States Arsenal. Now, in order to prove what I say, I'm just simply asking this. Why doesn't the Senate and the Congress investigate, inventory through the GAO, where our weapons are, and announce to the American people how much money we're short on those weapons? Again, go back and follow the money. Now, that's going to be very hard to do because a series of cutout companies are always used to distribute that money, and the same thing is used to assimilate those weapons in foreign countries. In the Benghazi case, before the ambassador, weapons on C-130s were coming from the United States, even with air-to-air refueling, and going into foreign countries. And later it was exposed, but nothing was done in the press about it. And a little back coverage, and that's about it, and then that went off the wires. Jordan, Turkey, Qatar, and Pakistan, safe houses run by cutout contractors affiliated with the CIA, control those weapons. Those weapons were taken by U.S. Navy Marines around SEALs, as a matter of fact, escorted those weapons around the Horn, some of them into the annex near Benghazi. The question being, what happened to those weapons when they went to the annex? When the riot started, what happened to those weapons at the annex? Those weapons were removed at the same time that the riot was starting. It was a diversion so that the annex and other areas where these U.S.-made weapons were stored could be pilfered and sent off to other operations. Basically, the reason that we were shipping these weapons to these that particular foreign country is that we were setting up a secret army. This was before the Syrian rebels were formed. Sometime after that, about a year after we had those weapons that we were shipping pilfered and stolen, we went into a systematic thing of trying to cover it up. Why do we want to cover it up? I mean, so we're setting up a secret army. So then when it started coming out about the weapons being stored in Jordan, suddenly the president of the United States made an announcement that we're going to help the rebels. We're going to set up the rebels. We'd already been funneling arms to the rebels for over 2 years. Now, all I'm asking, where is the investigative body in the Senate and the Congress that should be investigating what I say? They should be investigating, trying to defuse me. Answer the questions and investigate what I say. That's all. Follow the money. They can't follow the money because it would expose the very people in high office that is receiving the money going into campaign contributions. If you notice, we have a tremendous election coming up here, which is going to be very questionable about the legitimacy of it and all that kind of stuff. I don't get involved in politics. Do not want to get trapped and pushed into politics. I don't care what the Secretary of State, whether she runs or doesn't run, or whatever she does. And I don't call names. I don't cuss people out. I don't say things like that. The point is, what needs to be investigated is where in the hell those guns and where the hell the money go. Why is our Treasury short? Why isn't the GAO doing their job? We had the same thing happen in Iran-Contra. We took weapons off the books when our 82nd and 101st went down to hold maneuvers in Honduras. I'm one of the pilots that flew the weapons back to El Toro Marine Naval Air Station, China Lakes, to be retrofitted and then taken back down and given to radical groups and rebel groups in Central America and all the way down into Argentina. So there's an international weapons smuggling operation going on, run right out of the
in operations such as this. What can you tell us?
I'll sum it up like this. When I was 20 years old, I was flying co-pilot for Regina Airlines out of Miami, Florida, and Riddle Airlines out of Miami, Florida. Riddle was at that time a startup cargo company. Regina was a Cuban air cargo carrier. We would take guns that were pilfered and stolen from National Guard armories, and we were taking those at El Castro. At the same time, because of the OAS treaty, we were also supplying tanks, planes, and armament and ammunition and guns to Batista. So we had guns going to Batista, and under the table in black operations, CIA-sponsored, through the White House, through the Pentagon, we were sending guns to this rebel, Fidel Castro. At that time, people only pronounced his name as Castro. In fact, Raul Castro, his brother, gave me one of the fatigue hats when we were in there at one time. Now, that was the 50s. Bring it on up, fast forward through a lot of things. We had Angola. U.S.-made weapons showed up in Angola. We've had other brush wars. We come up into the Iran-Contra, one of the biggest arms smuggling operations that's ever been known in the United States. The documents are now creeping forward. It substantiates that the CIA was not running guns, the White House was running guns, and the Pentagon, knowledge, was running guns, to weapons, high-impact weapons, to foreign agents. And that's about all that I can say. I mean, it was just an internet. What the cover-up is in Benghazi, what the cover-up was in Iran-Contra, what the cover-up was in the Batista days, and also Haiti and Angola, was international gun running that comes from the United States.
We are so grateful to have with us tonight just a great man of valor, he's a CIA officer, Robert Tosh Plumlee. Mr. Plumlee has made headlines. Glad you're joining us tonight, Mr. Plumlee.
Well, glad to be with you.
The last time you were on our show, in fact, you were on with our intelligence asset, Insider W. You guys were talking about all sorts of things. You were talking about Benghazi. What's happened since the last time you were on?
And in my opinion, with my background and what I know, I conclude that it's covering up an international gun running operation that's been going on for over 40-something years, and the guns are pilfered, sent overseas, out of our direct commercial sales, monitored by the Blue Lantern, which, by the way, is supposed to be handled by the U.S. State Department. I try not to make allegations. I'm dumbfounded because they won't acknowledge these questions or answer. We are short over 16 billion U.S.-made weapons. Where are they? Where did the money go? So my contention is simply that we've been involved in an international gun-running operation all the way back to Cuba in the 50s, especially in the Iran-Contra era, and other brush wars in Angola that end up with U.S.-made American weapons in radical hands. So the only thing that I can conclude is that we start a conflict, we escalate the conflict, and we furnish both money to both sides of the conflict. Or we furnish guns to both sides of the conflict. And then we assimilate that money through cutout companies and private contractors back to campaign contributions. And that is the reason, in my opinion, that they refuse to answer those questions. Answering those questions can open the door to an international gun running operation that has been on the books, black book, for a number of years.
You've got experience going back into the early 60s with the CIA.
White House, the CIA logistical support, and the Pentagon knows all about it. I can't say it any plainer than that, can I?
No, and that's mighty plain. I'll tell you that.
Did the ambassador find out what was going on? Oh, wait a minute. The ambassador already knew what was going on, because what he was concerned about was not the weapon shipment. He was concerned about why these radical groups were getting Stinger missiles. So he wasn't complaining about the weapons. He wasn't complaining about people making movies. He was complaining about how are these radicals getting Stinger missiles. He already knew about the gun running operation. That was part of his cover, and that was why he was sent over there to monitor and run that operation. Now, Stevens was a CIA. Stevens was monitoring operations for the CIA under the disguise of an ambassador. In other words, he's an intelligence officer. You understand what I just said? Now, he already knew about the gun running. He already knew about the safe houses in Jordan, Qatar, and Pakistan and Turkey. He knew about all that. In other words, because we were building a secret army, covert, to go in and destabilize or form our own army for whatever reason, sell them the guns, let the guns get out of stock into rebels' hands, and then also be stolen from those rebels, and then shoot down our helicopters with U.S. Navy SEALs on board. Now, to me, that's an atrocity that I will not let go uninvestigated. If they want to put me in jail for what I just said, then bring me in front of a federal judge, because I'll tell it to the federal judge. This thing needs to be investigated. It stinks to high heaven. And I said I wasn't going to get upset about this. I'm not upset. I just cannot